Exactly. So what do you think was causing this, guys? What do you think? You think it was Iran? Because back then he said all the right things, right? Now he's not saying it anymore. Here's what he said on John Carlson's show. Did I say John Carlson? Wow, that was totally right in the brain. Tucker Carlson show. So now you're saying that on Tucker Carlson's show? Okay, what did President Trump say about all this? Because right now I already have questions, many questions, because as we've seen, Joe Kent is saying one thing here, one thing there. What did the president say today?
When I read a statement,
The audio isn't playing from News Boss into the
Iran
thing.
was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized.
No, I fixed that. Now I don't have the video. This stuff is the News Boss stuff isn't playing. I fixed the rest of it.
Military scholars are saying for years that presidents should have taken out Iran because they wanted a nuclear weapon. They were, if we didn't do the attack, or if I'll go a step further. If I didn't terminate the Iran nuclear deal given to us, one of the worst deals ever made by Barack Hussein Obama. Remember when they sent Boeing 757s over there, loaded with cash, hundreds of millions of dollars? You would have been very happy. This was a wonderful. They sent hundreds of millions. People forget that. Does anybody remember? Right? You remember hundreds of millions of dollars in a.
Okay, hang on one second. We're gonna leave the Obama conversation till later. But he's saying now that he may have been a leaker on top of that. In fact, that's what the administration is saying. It says he was a known leaker, cut out of briefings, not involved in any of the Iran planning. So can we be real about this? I say, what's the proof? Provide the evidence. Provide the proof. Because right now, everything that we know for fact is contrary to literally every single thing Joe Kent is saying. You know, I liked Joe Kent when he first ran for office. Second time he ran for office, we were kind of mixed on our support. We said, why would this guy who lost run again? And we did support him. We did support him because we don't want Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez. But is this what we were supporting, or is something else going on here? Because as soon as you book an interview with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, that makes me think you want to start a podcast. That makes me think you have a retirement plan and it involves podcasting. That's what it sounds like to me. Much better investments, let me tell you. Podcast money ain't TV money, you know what I'm saying? TV money ain't what it used to be either. Neither's movie money either. Right? Just look at the Oscars. You hear of any of that stuff? It is nuts to me. Absolutely nuts to me. And then there's one last thing. There's one last thing about Joe Kent that is really, really bothering me. And it's something that a lot of people can understand. You know, a lot of the people we know who go off the path, we'll call it, be it in religion or be it in politics or whatever the case may be, a lot of them are influenced by somebody else. The Daily Wire had this one. Joe Kent's current wife, Heather Kazar, is an employee of former Hezbollah and RT propagandist Max Blumenthal, who was platformed by Dugin-linked Alexander Dugin. Are you kidding me with this? So now you've got this. This isn't me saying this. This is the Daily Wire. So I wonder, if the new wife has been a bad influence on him. I'm not one to judge what goes on in somebody's households, but how many times have we seen a girl or a guy turn somebody going the wrong direction on this stuff? It's sad what happened to his first wife. There you go. Exactly. I don't think this is Fang, though. We're not talking about China stuff. You look at what happened to his first wife. It's tragic. It's sad. He clearly still has some grief left, but to blame the entire world for what happened, show me the evidence. And what everybody's been saying is, well, Ari, he can't show it to you because it's classified. If there was no reason to go to Iran, he just revealed the deepest, darkest secret of the Trump administration of both terms. And then he would have no compunction about revealing anything else. So show us the actual evidence. Or is this a Candace Owens situation? I have the evidence. Tune in next week. I have the evidence. Or is it a Tucker Carlson? I'm going to show you the evidence, and I'm going to sound like I know what I'm talking about. Is that what it is? Because I haven't seen any evidence from either of them. In fact, everything they say has been disproven. Personally, I'm just sad about this. Sad. Because I went back and checked the archives. I spent this morning listening to old episodes of the Ari Hoffman show and what Joe Kent said. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate the vote of confidence. And what I was really sad about was when Joe Kent first got nominated to the position, I said, oh, this is perfect. This is great. The guy who used to be in counterintelligence is going into the intelligence world. This makes the most amount of sense. But then I guess the swamp runs deeper than any of us knew. If you guys got a different theory on this, you are more than welcome to tell it to me. Give me a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Because for me, I'm just sad. Just sad. I'm not disappointed because second-term Joe Kent wasn't what I hoped for. The second time he ran for office. I'm just sad. Because I spent the entire day explaining this to people who don't know anything about it. And how many people are going to run with this crazy? And how many people are going to use this for clicks? I saw me being used for clicks on social media today to support Joe Kent with the interview I did with President Trump. I saw that on social media today. How many people are going to come up with whatever crazy conspiracy theory they want and say, see, the guy who ran our intelligence agencies knows all about it. And yet they're not going to look at his past tweets where he contradicts himself. And they're not going to look at his past statements where he contradicts himself. And they're not going to know the facts of the second Iraq War. They're not going to look at any of that. Instead, it's just going to be what confirms my narrative. It's really, really sad. And speaking of confirming narratives, looks like around here, looks like the left is finally waking up to the mass wealth exodus, and they're finally doing stories we told you about 2 weeks ago. Big I told you so up next. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show.
Mattress Center? You'll be glad
Talk.
you did.
Yeah.
But we're doing Seattle Way next, correct?
Mattress Center. Interest-free financing available. Every purchase backed by
So I just went walking over to the Starbucks in Seattle Center for the last couple weeks we have before it shuts down. And I go walking over there because I just needed a walk today after all this, after all the Joe Kent stuff and everything else going on. It was a nutty day. So I go walking over there to get a coffee. And I had heard from people in the newsroom that there had actually been vandalism at the Chihuly Glass Museum. For those of you who don't know what it is, here in Seattle, Dale Chihuly has this big museum of all his glass works. Some of it was actually on display in Israel, but he's got this big outdoor garden. Now, you have to pay admission to get into the outdoor garden, but something I've always remarked is basically all that's between you and admission to the museum is a few trees. You can basically worm your way through those trees at any point. There's this little mesh fence, but you can get through it really, really easily if you want to get into the garden part of the museum. And it seems like last night... What else would you like to know? I can tell you how to break the steering column, too, if you want all this kind of stuff. But if you look at this, you see that this was clearly some massive damage exactly where I was walking today. I actually took some video to put up on social media later of what happened. So apparently some dude snuck his way into the museum and caused $240,000 worth of damage to the glass that's in the garden outside. $240,000. This is Monday night, just after 11 o'clock. The guy was arrested. He broke more than one piece, sir. He broke a few things. In fact, you can see the shattered glass everywhere. According to the SPD blotter, officers arrived, contacted museum security. They found large pieces of colorful glass broken on the walking path. That's the one right outside the armory. They identified the suspect, took him into custody. He became combative, refused to follow commands, was eventually taken into custody. My guess is, what do you think? Drug addict? That would be my guess. Now, when I was walking over to Seattle Center today, I saw what I always see when I go over to Seattle Center to get a coffee. I saw the hygiene station that has been installed over there, and I also saw lots of homeless people hanging out in the armory. Not that clean, I would say. The hygiene station is more for washing hands, I'd say. Yes, they're exactly right. The ashtrays need cleaning, I think, though. Maybe the crack pipes do. So, what you're looking at here is yet another Seattle crime that could have been prevented. $10 says as soon as we get the charging documents on this guy, prolific offender, prolific offender, prolific offender, prolific offender. Guaranteed. But speaking of Starbucks, by the way, and this one that's closing. So, we said 2 weeks ago, when we first found out Starbucks was leaving, that we had a source that told us they had given up a bunch of office space here in Seattle. And I remember putting this out there, and people tried to hit me with community notes, and I said, nope, I know what's going on, I know what's going on. Well, guess what? It got confirmed by a real estate magazine out in Tennessee. The Seattle-based company is reportedly seeking 250,000 square feet of office space for a new hub, according to CoStar. If completed at that scale, the deal would significantly boost Nashville's office market while shrinking the company's footprint here in Seattle. They're working with commercial real estate firm CB Richard Ellis to identify potential locations, and one property under consideration is the Peabody Union Complex in downtown Nashville, a nearly 300,000 square foot office building that was completed last year, but has not yet secured a major tenant. The space is large enough that Starbucks could potentially occupy the entire building. Now, what I find interesting about this is a friend of ours, Doge Washington, posted last night, here's the vacancy in the Seattle building here on First Avenue. And it had a listing on a real estate site here in Seattle for about 45,000 square feet. That's the former Amazon space. It's retail space. It's not the whole office site. But do you know how much square footage there is in the Starbucks building total that's down there? Because this is the bigger story. 300,000. So if you're looking for a place to move your entire operations to, wouldn't you pick the 300,000 square foot place in Nashville, where you don't have to worry about homeless guys showing up and shattering your glass museum right outside one of your establishments? Maybe, perhaps, just a thought. So, is it any wonder that now they're leaving? And remember how many people said, Ari, they're not leaving, they're just expanding their footprint. And I said, I can't say the rest of it on air. Exactly. That's the word I was looking for, Zach. Thank you very, very much. That's what it was. Yeah, had a few more letters in there. Two syllables, as a matter of fact. Ah, very good. Very good. I see what you did there. Oh, man. Oh, very good. Very good, Zach. What's not very good and what happened in Rainier Valley in Rainier Beach a few weeks ago, where there was a shooting at a school. So the Seattle Police Department announced today they took a suspect into custody for the fatal shooting of the two kids outside Rainier Beach High School. There was very little information given out at this press conference. They wouldn't tell you where they arrested the guy. They wouldn't tell you any of the details about it. All they said was, we have somebody in custody, and this is a gun violence problem. To me, this sounds like you arrested a kid from another school, and you arrested the kid in the school would be my guess, and this was gang violence. That's what it sounds like to me. Maybe we should talk about gang violence, because guns don't shoot themselves. Maybe we should have a discussion about that. But it doesn't seem like the Seattle Police Department is actually interested in having any of those discussions. It's going to be gun violence, gun violence, gun violence. Oh, you guys want to deal with gun violence? How about we start with the warlord of the autonomous zone who was handing out AR-15s out of the trunk of his car on video during the deadly autonomous zone in 2020? If you guys were serious about dealing with this stuff, it's on video. No discounting it. Tons of witnesses. It's not about the gun. It's not about the gun. It's that they don't want to deal with the actual problems. They don't want to deal with the homelessness. They don't want to deal with the crime. They don't want to deal with prolific offenders. They don't want to deal with gang violence. They don't want to deal with any of it. Instead, whose fault is it? The gun. That guy did $240,000 worth of damage to the Chihuly Glass Museum just using his hands. Maybe we have an issue with prolific offenders. Maybe we have an issue with gang violence, and it's not so much about the gun. From Elaine over on the text line, I'm more concerned about Joe Kent blaming Israel. He is now, in my book, as hateful as Tucker and Candace Owens. This one here, from the 707, he's trying to make himself a moderate for his next congressional run. You think this makes him a moderate? No. This doesn't make him a moderate. If you're saying he's trying to go the left, Vox. For those of you who don't know Vox is definitely not my little black book of the right-wing media conspiracy. They are most definitely in my little red book of the Maoist Marxist conspiracy. They were saying stay away from Joe Kent. This one here, Jeff in Tacoma thinks Joe Kent has been replaced by the lizard people. This one here from Dave in Sierra Nevada. It's good that Kent is joining up with Carlson and Owens. Maybe they can get a package deal together on a therapist. Oh, for those of you who are complaining about the audio coming in on the live stream, we fixed it. It's fixed. Go check it out right now. You can check all this out. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. Is the SAVE Act already in jeopardy? Well, they're talking about voting on it right now with some test votes, and it's not looking real good. We'll give you the latest updates when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
with the Ari Hoffman Show on Fox.
The Democrats are really holding firm on having illegal aliens vote. Oh, wait, am I allowed to say aliens? Bob Ferguson signed a bill where now apparently I have to say non-citizens. Okay, let's use non-citizens, because that means they're here illegally, right? Let's use that one there, Bob. No problem. Instead of aliens. You're right. Aliens isn't very PC. I think we're going to see a movie about an alien tonight, right, Zach? So if you have a whole bunch of illegal aliens against a whole bunch of fired Seattle public school teachers, is that aliens versus predators? Oh, no, I just... Could be that, too. Okay, so anyway, I remember it wasn't that long ago. In fact, this is back in 2021. You might remember the mayor of Chicago who looked like a Batman villain, Lori Lightfoot. She was really big on ID back in the COVID years. You have to show ID or the Rona might get you. So before going into a bar, you have to show that you got the jab, which is a form of ID, or you weren't allowed to have alcohol. Which my guess is any bit of Jim Beam or Johnny Walker or even rubbing alcohol would probably kill that thing. But you need to show ID. They were really hot on that back then. Don't take my word for it. How does the average American feel about this right now? NBC News. Quote, Republicans are aggressively touting a popular provision, their sweeping Save America Act, to overhaul elections nationwide, requiring photo identification to vote. Is there anything you don't need photo ID for? Not to order a coffee today. I didn't need a photo ID for that. But you do need photo ID to get on an airplane. Oh, wait a minute. Do you know they need photo ID to vote in the Capitol? No joke. Do you know how they record their votes? They have an ID card. They put it in a machine. They press yes, no, it's got their photo on it. They need the photo ID in order to vote. And yet the Democrats are pushing back against it. All right, you don't like anything else in the Save America Act? Let's do an up and down vote just on that. Just on that. Quote, it's a policy long opposed by Democrats in Congress, who liken it along with the bill's proof of citizenship requirement to register to vote to Jim Crow era laws aimed at preventing African Americans from voting. It's aimed at preventing illegal non-citizens from voting. But that message is increasingly falling flat with the American public, including black voters, as photo IDs are increasingly required for common activities just like flying. Time out. Increasingly required. I don't remember a time in my life where I didn't need photo ID. I get to high school. The first thing they did was take a picture of me, not for the yearbook, but for my photo ID, and that was in 1995. So what are we talking? Increasingly needed. Yeah, you want to buy alcohol? Photo ID. You want to get on a plane? Photo ID. You want to open a bank account? Photo ID. Yes! Little photo ID. Do they still even have that ride? Do they? Okay, that thing was pretty fun. I remember with my kids. You let me know if that thing's still open. I think it got an overhaul, like somebody else sponsored it. I think that's what may have happened. Yeah, whatever. Anywho, so, I think it was electric back then. You're on a track anyway. It's like the fake cars. They were gas on that track? I don't even remember. It's been so long. My kids are now onto Star Wars land. About the gas cars, exactly right. So nobody believes this. A Pew Research Center poll in August tested a variety of election rules and found that 83% of U.S. adults support requiring all voters to show government-issued photo identification to vote, and only 16% oppose it. That's up from 77% support in a 2012 Pew poll. Support now includes 71% who self-identify as Democrats, 83% of independents, and 76% of black voters. Quote, it kind of feels like the only Americans not to support voter ID requirements are Democrats here in Congress, said Senate Majority Leader John Thune. NBC News asked more than 24 Democratic lawmakers whether they would accept some kind of photo ID rule to vote. Just one voiced openness to it, Senator John Fetterman. That's the only one. The rest of them instead are calling it Jim Crow and saying it's awful and saying it's terrible and saying it's no good. Makes no sense whatsoever. Bonnie over on the text line says, hey, Ari, so disappointed in Joe Kent. It's bad enough we have the Democrats thinking we shouldn't be in Iraq. Just keep in mind what they did to over 30,000 of their own people for protesting and shooting rockets. Oh, I think you mean Iran. Shooting rockets at their neighbors who are trying to stay neutral. I don't need to remind you of their hateful past with Iraq not being a threat. Perhaps, mean Iran. Once in 47 years can have peace in the Middle East. It gets old hearing the hateful threats, death to America, and once perhaps Israel can live with some sort of normalcy. This one here, everybody's just texting me the same things. Everybody's disappointed in Joe Kent. Everybody's sad about Joe Kent because it was somebody that a lot of people around here believed in. And a lot of people are upset about this. This one here from Mike kind of makes you wonder what's really going on with Joe Kent, doesn't it? Yes, exactly right. This one here, this is from Alice, and this is one that's getting more traction online. The question was Joe Kent going to get fired before he resigned? I've seen that online. I haven't seen anything to actually illustrate it. The last thing I saw was a report that was saying that J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard met with him on Monday, but we don't know what that meeting was about, so I don't want to speculate until we actually have evidence one way or the other. The good news is that though things may not be great with Joe Kent, a famous case from around here is finally, looks like it's heading to the Supreme Court. And of course, we're talking about the case with the Olympic spa and men who want to go to an all-women's spa. Up next, my friends, we'll tell you all the details. Does this thing have a case in court? And will it set precedent for us here in Washington and across the U.S.? You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. No, you're not hearing country music because young Zach is here. You're hearing it because it is time to win fantabulous prizes. Today, we are giving away two tickets to see Aaron Lewis and the State Liners at the Muckleshoot Event Center on March 24th, which is next week. All you have to do is text the word I give you to the number I give you. Not your name, not your phone number, not your address, not Ari. You are the best looking radio host. If only you could do something about that receding hairline. Do not text any of that. Just the word itself. Today's word is a while. As in, I'll see you in a while. It's been a while. Right, exactly. There you go. That's an even better way to go. I was going to say, that's not these guys. No. I don't know this. Now you got to explain this to me. Aaron Lewis. Oh, I was about to say, he sounds kind of like that guy, but he is that guy, is what you're telling me. That is basically the only one I know, so that would be that. But anyway, the word is a while, A-W-H-I-L-E. Text it to 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Zach's time on the morning show, yes, one word, just one word. It's a while. A while. A while. Right. Your time on the morning show is well spent. Look at all the music stuff you learned from this. Yes. They are still. Yeah. See, Disneyland, I always like Disneyland better than Disney World. It's my own personal thing. It feels more immersive. Disney World feels more spread out, not as immersive. Just one of the things that doesn't make sense is Star Tours is over in Tomorrowland, not Star Wars Land, because it was built in the 1980s. I remember going on that sucker for the first time. It was mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. Oh, you want to know something funny? Disney doesn't throw anything out. Sorry, Zach, you're not going to get as much stuff as auctions as you want. The old pilot of the Star Tours ride is now the DJ in the Star Wars Cantina bar. Yeah, like they move these suckers around. So wait a second, that means all the Song of the South characters are somewhere in the Disney vault from Splash Mountain. All those racist little critters, they are somewhere waiting to be unearthed. We can find them somewhere in the Disney vault along with Walt Disney's head and the Nazi propaganda. We can find it all down there, right? Oh, Zach doesn't know any of this? You never saw this Saturday Night Live skit? You saw it. You know which one I'm talking about. The kids discover the Disney vault. Now you have to stay forever. Don't worry, we have Lion King 33 and a third. Anyway, switching gears entirely, the Ninth Circuit Court on March 12th denied petitions by the Linwood-based Olympus Spa for rehearing of its case in front of the original three-panel judges against enforcement action by the Washington State Human Rights Commission. And after rehearing on back the full Ninth Circuit to not allow pre-op trans women to access its female-exclusive facilities according to the Linwood Times. What does that mean? You might remember the Olympus Spa is a female spa. And some dude who thinks he's a woman started showing up to the all-women's spa where a lot of women are there naked. And actually, the decisions on this, I can't read on air. I can't, because they are rather graphic about things swinging out there. I kid you not, it is in the court documents. Actually in the court documents. So we're not going to read that. But the Ninth Circuit doesn't want to hear it, so oh, I wouldn't say that, dude. No, not with this one. No, sir. So, question is it going to the Supreme Court? Olympus Spa attorney Tracy Tribbett, Pacific Justice Institute, in a statement to the Linwood Times, shared her client's intent to file a petition to the U.S. Supreme Court that the enforcement of Washington's law against discrimination infringes on free speech, free exercise of religion, and freedom of association. Quote, based on our initial review of the 7 separate opinions, we're optimistic that the Supreme Court will take an interest in the petition for review. Olympus Spa, located near the Linwood Event Center, is fashioned as a health and wellness facility where patrons are required to be nude in some of the procedures as per its Korean-inspired tradition. Because of this, it is held a requirement for members to have female parts, a requirement held throughout its 20-plus years of operation. Now, here's the thing. Why would you want to go... Oh, wait a minute. Now, I'm answering the own question. Why do we want to go in the girls' bathroom when we were kids? You ever see Revenge of the Nerds? We all know what this is about, right? And yet, why does this dude want? There are plenty of spas. Why do you want to go to this one so bad? So, transgender women, according to the article, are only admitted at Olympus Spa if they have undergone post-operative sex confirmation surgery. Yeah, either way, it's not a great situation. So this one person sought access to the spa, but allegedly told the request was declined because transgender women without surgery are not welcome because it would make other customers and staff uncomfortable. Well, it makes me uncomfortable just reading the court documents about things swinging in the wind, so I can only imagine how it makes women feel when they see the thing swinging in the wind right there when they're in the spa. I hope this goes to the Supreme Court. I hope we get to see the ruling on it, and I'm kind of excited for it to go to the Supreme Court so we can get a ruling on this stuff. And if it rules here in Washington, imagine what it's going to do for the rest of the country. Now, meanwhile, while we're uncovering fraud in the rest of the country, there is a bombshell article about fraud right here at home. And up next, my friends, we're going to tell you what that fraud is. It is damning, absolutely damning. Tell you all about it up next. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up, the fraud in Washington may make the fraud in Minnesota look like nothing, according to a new report. But before we get to any of that, my friends, is your chance to pay your bills by winning $2,000 cash, entering to win your chance to win $2,000 cash right now on the Ari Hoffman Show. Now, if you want the chance to pay your bills, all you have to do is text the word I give you to the number I give you. Just once. Only one time. Text the word pot, as in I have a pot of gold that I can use to pay my bills. As in, if I started selling pot because it's legal here in Washington, I might be able to pay my bills. That's what we're talking. Pot. P-O-T. Text the word pot to 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Is there? I missed that one. Oh, okay, it's one of those. Yeah, clearly missed that one. You know what Washington might be missing pretty soon is all the businesses that are leaving now. That's right. All these businesses are now leaving. There's a new website, leftwashington.org, which is tracking all these businesses that have left since the passing of the income tax here in Washington. Now, or as a result of the passing of the income tax here in Washington. According to leftwashington.org, rather than attracting businesses and prosperity to our state, bad policy is driving jobs and families out of our state. We track and monitor businesses' closures and losses in Washington state. So, they have here 55 companies so far have been affected. 11,860 plus jobs have been lost. The estimated tax revenue they have lost is $165.9 million a year so far. Estimated GDP impact, $4.3 billion. Billion with a B. 47 layoff and closure events. This is damning. Absolutely damning. And it's been updated. So, for example, just over the weekend, we found out about Blazing Bagels. Just yesterday, we found out about the Rise Baking Company. You name it, it's on here, including Starbucks. But there's all these little companies that you may not have heard about. There's all these tech companies you may not have heard about. Talks about all the layoffs at Meta, Expedia, Microsoft, you name it. Swedish Health Services. How many more need to go? I know it's tax season, and I know everybody's gearing up for April 15th, the Ides of April. That's what I'm more concerned about than the Ides of March. I think I missed the Ides of March. Nothing bad happened, thank God. But the Ides of April, I now think to myself, why am I paying my taxes? It's just going to go to things I don't support, illegal aliens, and Somali fraud. And I am so much more right than I knew. National Review has a new article today. I got woken up by Lars Larson about the Joe Kent thing. I got woken up by my son about the Joe Kent thing. Then after that, ping, 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 ping. Everything was about this article. This article from National Review by Malia Marks and Abigail Anthony. During the State of the Union address, President Trump announced a war on fraud initiative, citing the scandals surrounding Somali-run daycares in Minnesota. But other states deserve scrutiny too. Specifically, National Review looked into daycare programs in Washington state and found that Somalis are vastly overrepresented in child care services relative to their share of the population. While this doesn't necessarily indicate malfeasance, a deeper investigation found suspicious finances and operations in a number of taxpayer-supported entities, as well as limited transparency and government oversight. To cite just a few examples, an entity registered with the state as dissolved received thousands of dollars in government funds. Caretakers licensed for only a few children report hundreds of thousands in earnings or sales, and nonprofits receiving six-figure grants don't even have working phone numbers. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, because since December, let's go back in time to December for a second here, I was in Israel. Nick Shirley's video drops exposing the fraud in Minnesota. And I see that it's focused mainly on the daycare fraud in Minnesota. And I say to myself, self? That kind of triggers a memory. Don't you remember that there was this woman who ran for office here in King County? She ran for King County Council. Her name was Uba Gardir. Do you remember her? She was what we call the bus bombing lady. You remember her? Oh, just in case you don't, let's pull up a little bit of this here for you. The bus bombing lady here, because she walked onto a bus filled with middle schoolers, and then threatened to blow the thing up 10 years before she ran for office. And then they start running off the bus. So that's bus bombing lady. And I remember is that when that video went viral and we exposed it right here on the show, people kept sending me tips, more tips, more tips, more tips. But then we found something, some of her campaign finances didn't make sense. They said, Ari, why is all her money coming from Minnesota? And I wondered if it was Ilhan Omar who was sending support this way. That was the theory at the time. But then when the Nick Shirley video came out, we did some digging. And I reopened those campaign finance files from the PDC. And we found out she was getting money from daycares in Minnesota. Why would daycares in Minnesota be funding a Somali... wait a minute. I just answered my own question. So they were funding her campaign here. And then I started pulling up the addresses of these daycares. And what didn't make sense to me at the time was that these daycares didn't have playgrounds, looked abandoned in the middle of the day because you could pull them up on Google Earth. And it looked like nobody was there. This has been going on for years, literally for years. According to National Review, while Washington State is home to some of the largest Somali communities on the West Coast, its approximately 15,000 residents of Somali descent represent a fraction of Minnesota's estimated 76,000, according to recent U.S. Census Bureau figures. With more than 8 million Washington residents, individuals of Somali ancestry amount to less than 0.25% of the state's population. But they are significantly overrepresented in child care-related services. According to a 2024 report from the nonprofit Child Care Aware of Washington, 6.7% of Washington child care providers list Somali as the primary language. A database from the state's Department of Children, Youth and Families, which oversees child care, shows that 249 of the state's 6,857 licensed child care providers list their primary language as Somali, about 20 times the amount that would be represented of the Somali share of the population. For comparison, okay, just for comparison, there's about 70,000 Jews in Seattle. In Seattle. I know of 4 Jewish preschools, if that gives you any sense of the math on this here. So, why does it seem like every single person who's Somali has a preschool, has a daycare? However, the exact figures are unclear since daycares can remove information about their operating languages from the state database. When National Review began investigating in December, the number of licensed daycares that publicly listed Somali as their primary language on the database stood at 283, while over 500 identified Somali as one of their spoken languages. But those numbers have fallen as the stories of rampant fraud in Minnesota grew into a national scandal. One nonprofit organization focused on child care in Washington said it operates group communications with more than 600 Somali child care providers and assistant teachers, and if that's the case, at least 1 out of 25 Somali-descended individuals in the state works in child care services. The growth of child care services generally has been encouraged by the state. Washington State's population grew by nearly 1 million people over the past decade, lots of them coming from California, but child care capacity remained mostly static, leading organizations such as the Center for American Progress to claim that a majority of the state's residents live in a child care desert. We love how the left likes using that, like they do with grocery store deserts. To address this, the state passed the Fair Start for Kids Act in 2021 to allocate more than $1 billion towards child care-related initiatives and expanded the financial assistance available to child care-related services. As a result, daycare is a lucrative business with limited oversight. The state subsidizes up to $4 per child per hour for small family home care providers, a classification that includes almost all Somali primary language daycares in the DCYF database. These facilities can be licensed for up to 12 children. At this rate, a year of full-time care for 4 children would bring in over $33,000 in taxpayer dollars, while watching a dozen children would gross $99,840 in annual subsidies alone. Now, here's how messed up this system is. Let's say Zach and I are related, okay? And let's say we live next door to each other. We live on the same block. So let's say Zach has 2 kids and I have 2 kids. I can register as a daycare for Zach's kids. Zach can register as a daycare for my kids. Nobody will check up on it, and you get subsidies, and you get to write off all your expenses, because now every childcare related expense and anything in your home, because it's your home business, is now tax deductible. Zach's like, how quickly can we get this worked out?
Wrong.
I didn't know they made this much money. I've been doing life wrong. We literally live in a neighborhood where my wife's sister lives 2 blocks away from us. She's got 3 kids. We've got 3 kids. Her brother lives down the street from them. They've got 3 kids. We all could have been doing this scam the whole time. And you know what really ticks me off? How hard it is for actual daycares to get licensed. I think I've been talking about this since the scandal broke. I know a daycare, a Jewish daycare that's trying to get licensed right now, doing everything right, and it is taking forever because the state sucks so bad with this stuff. So why don't they do it for the home daycares? Kismaya Family Childcare is licensed to care for 9 children, but reported upwards of $750,000 in sales in 2025. The state paid them just over $120,000, but its business entity was administratively dissolved in 2023. So it's not clear where the money even went. They gave them close to $1 million, and they have no idea where the money actually went. Aside from per-child subsidies, the state also has a long list of grant opportunities. The Early Achievers Need-Based Grant awards up to $1,000 every fiscal year for various supplies. The Quality Improvement Award, is that like a quality learning center, gives up to $9,000, and the Child Care Complex Needs Fund awards as much as $50,000 a year for disability-related improvements. Oh, what kind of disabilities are we talking about? Because this is where a lot of the fraud was happening in Minnesota. DCYF's Early Childhood Equity Grant offers daycare providers up to $100,000 in state funds for culturally responsive programming as part of racial demographics. By the way, it also violates the 14th Amendment and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. DCYF claims to have robust checks in place to prevent fraud, but we haven't actually seen them do any of that. And we already know that anytime they said this, other audits that have done have found almost $500 million in child care spending that has major questions about it. There are also numerous well-funded nonprofit operating organizations in the child care industry. Eric Koechling at Georgia Center for Opportunity told National Review that he looks to see whether the organization's website functions properly, whether the board members are listed, whether staff members are disclosed, whether financial documents or report forms like Form 990s are provided, and whether the executive compensation seems appropriate. They say the way nonprofits raise funds and sustain themselves is almost entirely based on trust and transparency. We're talking about organizations working with kids and families. That should be the most transparent. I know that whenever I was applying for grants, for the synagogue, for the schools that I did, for anything, for the youth program, somebody always looked me up, looked at my Form 990s. Are they in order? Where's their money coming from? Are their books audited? Do we trust how the money's spent? Washington State isn't doing any of that because a bunch of the organizations receiving taxpayer funds for child-related work do not have any of this stuff. They're sharing the same physical address. For example, Fatima Adam is the executive director of the Supportive Child Care Provider Alliance nonprofit, previously known as the Somali Child Care Provider Association, for which she is paid roughly $60,000. The organization claims to offer services such as technical support and nutrition support, but its website has no information, has broken links with their technical support website. Just making sure we all got that there. The most recent trainings offered by the organization were held a year ago, and there do not appear to be any scheduled in the future. Yet they received over $300,000 in government contributions. Tell me again about your robust checks. Fatima's sister Asia earned... Oh, yeah. Very good, Zach. Very good. Fatima's sister Asia earns over $50,000 running the nonprofit Our Hope, previously Hope Academy, which shares a business address with the other one and also receives six figures in government funding. And yet they have the same kind of problems. They're also listed as a team member at the other place, and their most recent Form 990 indicates they don't work with any related organizations. They claim that they're a fully functioning kindergarten through 8th grade school that also provides after-school activities, but they can't verify any of this. An automated response on their phone number offered special offers on dream vacations. Think about that for a second. So you're calling the daycare and they're selling dream vacations? Uh-huh. That must be what it is. Now they've updated the website since the news broke. This fraud goes so deep. This article is one of the longest articles I have ever read so far on the fraud. And let's not forget, DCYF. Oh, no, there's no fraud. Where's Tana Sen? Tana Sen is the head of DCYF. She hasn't been seen since all this news broke a few months ago. Nick Brown says he's not going to investigate it. Bob Ferguson doesn't want to investigate it. Katie Wilson doesn't want to address it at all. According to this article, Washington State has firmly discouraged inquiries. After Nick Shirley's long-form video, the Trump administration took notice and the Department of Justice charged 98 defendants in Minnesota, 85 of whom are Somali descent, for fraud-related crimes by early January. Washington State Attorney General Nick Brown condemned unsubstantiated claims of fraud targeting daycares run by Somalis. He further warned that showing up on someone's porch isn't an investigation, and instead could potentially qualify as illegal, threatening, or harassing behavior. In fact, he encouraged anyone experiencing such activity to contact law enforcement or the state's hate crimes and bias hotline. Katie Wilson expressed solidarity with Somali children workers by condemning extremist influencers who film these daycares. And let's not forget, Washington Democrats were considering legislation that would hide more of this information from people like me and Jonathan Cho and Cam Higbee and Kristen Magg, who go investigating this stuff. What do you have to hide? This is a damning, absolutely damning article from our friends over at National Review. And as soon as I saw it, you know what I did, right? Because I'm me. I called Malia Marks, one of the authors of it, and I said, how much more information do you need? Would you like me to send you my files of the stuff I haven't had time to research? And we spoke earlier today. So hopefully I'll be up late tonight after our movie screening that we go to, sending files over to National Review for them to review and see what else we can dig up with this fraud. But what really ticks me off is when I pay taxes, I think to myself, are these going to roads? You're not wrong. Are these going to roads? Are these going to bridges? Or are they going to fraudulent Somali or any other ethnic groups' daycares? I would say it's that one. Because you think just the Somali community is doing this? No, absolutely not. I guarantee you're going to find this in plenty of other communities as well. Probably tons of them. And probably you're going to find out that we could solve our massive budget gap here in Washington if we just cut out some of the fraud. Now think about this. This is just the daycare. We know there's a ton of fraud in hospice care as well. In fact, Nick Shirley found a bunch of this fraud in a recent trip to LA. And when we come back, we have the absolutely damning videos and audios of what he discovered in his most recent video. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Nick Shirley is out with another video exposing fraud, this time in Los Angeles, California. But what's interesting was it's not just Nick Shirley who's now exposing this. We're seeing other mainstream media outlets finally stepping up to expose the fraud. We've seen some stuff from CBS, we've seen some stuff from ABC. So when they say, oh, it's just right-wingers with their YouTube cameras, that's not what it is at all anymore. So much so it's gotten the attention of the White House.
Evidence of financial fraud, but wasn't talking to the Department of Justice about it. Health and Human Services had evidence of Medicaid fraud, but wasn't talking to the Department of Treasury about it. So what this executive order does is force the entire apparatus of the federal government to do two things: stop the fraud of the American taxpayer and make sure that the benefits that ought by right go to Americans.
So, in all seriousness, though, now J.D. Vance is in charge of this. Mr. Vice President, I'd be happy to host you here in Washington. We'll take you on a tour of everything. Right as this is announced, Nick Shirley drops his latest video. Now, Nick Shirley's the one who uncovered a whole bunch of this fraud in Minnesota. His latest video is an old hotel in Los Angeles. And it's one of these run-down, junky, U-shaped hotels where they have 2 stories and all the doors are outside to an open parking lot. You see them all over the lousy neighborhoods here in Seattle. Places that look like they have an hourly rate. Well, Nick Shirley walked up to this place, and apparently they're not hotel rooms, they're offices. And I'm using air quotes for the offices. Somebody tried to turn this defunct hotel into an office park, and they're supposed to be for hospice providers, people who bring hospice stuff to your house. Instead, what he found was a parking lot filled with fancy, high-end cars and nothing actually in these offices. Insane. And by the way, he went knocking on 6 consecutive places in that one complex. Nobody's in any of them. Nobody. No furniture. No nothing. That's just where they're getting the checks. Wait, gets way worse than that. Here's what else he found. in the parking lot, by the way, you don't see cars like that outside of the Javits Center when they're having the auto show. Oh, sorry, got to bring it back to Seattle for a second here. You don't see that outside the Lumen Field Event Center when they're having the auto show. Nicest high-end things you've ever seen. Cyber trucks, M8s, you name it, it's all there. How are people affording cars like that, and yet their offices are not open for business? I don't think they're working remotely. This is what has happened under blue states across the country, under blue governors across the country. Shouldn't the blue officials, shouldn't the Democrats want to root out and find the fraud so that way they don't have budget issues? Or is it if we keep this gravy train going, they'll keep voting for us? Oh, if you investigate the fraud, you're a giant, horrible, terrible, no good, very bad racist. Because those are the claims they're making. I can't wait for Nick Shirley to come here to Washington, because we know what he's going to find. We just did the whole story on National Review and what they found. This is going to be so bad for Washington. But do you have people like Bob Ferguson, Nick Brown? Are they going to start prosecuting Nick Shirley, Jonathan Cho, Cam Higbee for what they find? Because that's my concern. My concern is that they're going to find all the fraud. And then what happens is a guy like Nick Brown, who now has basically unlimited investigation powers because the Democrats gave it to him in the last legislative session, is going to go after the people investigating the fraud, not the fraud itself. Which, when you think about it, is bonkers crazy. And because we're taxing people up the wazoo, so many businesses are now leaving because Democrats want to keep the fraud gravy train a-rolling. So up next, my friends, another friend of ours from the tech world who's going to tell us all about what is actually happening since the income tax passed. Who's staying, who's fighting, who's going. That interview is up next for you. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
the massive capital flight, massive company exodus out of Washington, and it's only getting worse. You hear about the Howard Schultzes, you hear about the Starbucks, but you don't hear about the other ones that are happening around here, especially in our tech community. Joining us now on the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, general partner at Founders Co-op, which invests in tech startups. Back on the show, Aviel Ginsberg. Thanks so much for being back with us today, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So the last time we had you and another one of your colleagues on to discuss what the income tax could do if it passed. And now we're seeing what it is doing. What have you seen in your world of what's happening since this thing passed?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say I think when we were actually on, we were talking about QSBS, which was an element of it, which was essentially there's a thing called Qualify Small Business Stock to incent people to start early stage businesses and invest in them. And that did not move through, thankfully. But I think what we did know is something was going to go through, and what did go through was the income tax. And I think there's two pieces of it. I think one is that this stuff doesn't happen in isolation. So already there was this drumbeat leading up to this bill being passed of folks who were over 65, or a lot of my LPs who give me money to invest in the next generation of great companies in the region, who already were completely freaked out about the big lift in the estate tax. And for them, they had already done all of the planning work to essentially be like, I know where I'm moving. I may have already bought the second home, already bought the vacation home. I've done all the planning. Our friends have all talked. Like, man, and this is before it was passed. I was at a fundraiser that was actually for Rave, which is the Sounder charity, of a private dinner, a room of these giant donors. And the conversation is all these folks who are like, do you want my tickets next season? I'm of course still going to get them, but I'm not going to be here. And you're just thinking about it, you're like, what are we doing? This is before the thing's passed. Everybody made all the plans. And, now I think the writing is not just on the wall. Those people are out. I have one of my largest individual LPs who's sort of the last of the what we call super angels. So those are people who write 250K checks or more into startups in the region. He's officially out as of a few weeks ago. We lost the previous one last year to Nevada. So these are things that are, if I'm an early stage entrepreneur and I'm saying, where do I get my risk capital? How do I not just open a startup, but it's going to start being things like, how do I open a pizzeria? How do I open this restaurant? There's going to be people who are like, the person who would have written you that check, they don't live here anymore, and they're going to be investing where they live because they want the quality of life that actually comes with it. And I know everyone's like, capital taxes don't increase capital flight. I feel like I'm taking actual crazy pills because my inbox, the change of address. So we have over 100 LPs, so these investors who invest in our funds. And when we get to tax season, we have to send the change of address. Like, is there a change of address? Dude, dozens. Like, and this is not, like, this is real. This has already happened. So I feel like we're in this weird moment where we're still having debates of like what this is going to do, whereas I feel like we live in an echo because what we think still exists around us, the people that we think are still here, the capital that we expect will still come in, not just to our businesses, but to our charities, it's already gone, man.
See, that was what I was worried about because I heard people talking about leaving last year. I heard people talking about leaving the year before. And then when there were rumblings about any of this happened, they just said, screw it. I'm not going to chance it. I am out of here. And then if you look at South Union, where a lot of the tech was, and you look around down there, there used to be barbers, there used to be grocery stores. Those people relied on the Amazon people for a lot of their income, and a lot of them aren't there anymore, and it's happening all over the place. People go, oh, Blazing Bagels has nothing to do with this. And you know what? You may be right, but you don't know what the business's struggles were before that. And then they look at how many people are leaving and how many bagels they're selling, and they said, we just can't make a go of this. And
So I think it does, and I can make it very clear for you, is that there are a lot of businesses in this region that experienced growth over the past 15 years whose target demographic was households making over $150,000 a year. So combined household income. And for them, what their growth looked like is, I just have to open a store that's tailored to that audience with people who live within X miles of it. And my numbers go up and my numbers go up. And those folks have started seeing declines over the past 2 years. And they're saying, hey, I'm doing everything I used to do. Why is this not working? And I think what's unfortunate for us is that COVID created such a blip of behavioral change that it really has let a lot of these people not look at their businesses analytically, where I think there's a lot more blazing bagels out there. But there's folks who look back and they can't do a proper 10-year historical analysis of their business because of the weird things that happened inside of COVID. And it's only now that they're waking up and they're like, okay, you know, we now have 3 real years that we can't blame on COVID or other weird, like, pre-return to office, other stuff. And they're like, okay, we're kind of screwed. And that's where they're at.
Yeah, you saw that with, first it was the nonprofits. The nonprofits saw, oh my God, our grants from the government are gone. We can't spend like this anymore. Then you actually saw the government in a lot of cases said, well, we don't have this money coming in anymore, so we need to tax it or reduce whatever, however responsible they were being. Now you're kind of seeing the businesses wake up and realize, wait, where did everybody go? This isn't something that's just happening in Seattle. It's happening in other places too. We're talking with Aviel Ginsberg, who's a general partner of Founders Co-op. They do a lot of investing in the tech world. Now, is anybody interested in sticking around and fighting this, or is it mostly just screw it, I'm out of here?
No, I mean, like the answer is a mixture of like everything. It's yes and no. So, look, I know the audience you're talking. There's a lot of people who are just going to say it's my duty to pay this tax. Like for some reason, that's what gets them off is to feel like they owe something to the government that they're not deserving. There's some level of guilt, and they don't have the foresight to think through what's the impact. And so for them, it's like everybody who's leaving, you know, good riddance. They weren't good people in the first place. They never cared about Seattle. And that kills me because the amount of work and effort and time that I put in towards making this region great. And so I feel like as I'm calling out these things are going wrong, people are looking at me and being like, stop saying that because you're saying it. You know, it's making it true. I'm like, oh God, like I don't know what to do with you. So there's definitely this whole camp. There is definitely a camp of folks who are gonna stick around through this. But I think what's important to talk about with those folks is that doesn't mean that just because they want to, they're going to get to. And you know, I've talked about outside of these tax challenges, the world is changing and kind of breaking in an exceptionally fast way. Like AI is real, and I think everybody from the outside has been afraid of, oh my gosh, like AI is going to take my job. What is this going to mean? In the early days, everyone's like, you know, it's going to be paralegals, accountants, whatever. No, inside of the software world, we have done this to ourselves. Like we are making developers a job that is, I mean, what you do as a software developer today in any organization that's building anything on the bleeding edge is wildly different than what you were doing even 3 months ago or 6 months ago. And if you're in my viewpoint, you know it's never going back. You're never writing a line of code again purely by typing in. There was a great quote actually from Sam Altman of OpenAI, had a really bad, out of like very poor taste post on X today, like thanking all those folks who used to gruelingly write out code and came before us. Because like inside of this bubble, people are losing it. So I mean, you know, maybe don't feel bad for these people, but there is a lot of over $1 million dual income East Side households where these folks are working 24/7. They're skipping play dates with kids. They are freaking afraid, man, because 2 things are happening at once. One, they're in roles where they're like, I know we're not hiring anymore. They also know that the dollars that they were getting are going to CapEx to invest in hardware, in GPUs, not
2 minutes.
And they're like, if I'm not having exceptional output, I'm going to lose my job. I'm not
Thank
going to be able to afford my mortgage. I'm already pushing things to the limit. Oh, and by the way, the government thinks that I'm doing so well that I'm a millionaire who should be taxed. And so these people existentially are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs to not be able to afford living here. Well, the state's also saying, I'm going to take extra from you. And so I think I want to compound this by saying it's not just that people are saying, hey, I'm doing so well, this place is poorly governed, screw this, I don't need to do this. A lot of these folks that this tax is actually going to go after have existential fear that the lives that they've created for themselves, they can't even afford, much less afford with a 10% hit on top of it, because they're worried.
I just played it with music.
And they're also not sure where they get employed next. And it's pretty clear that it's not going to be here.
I'm still trying to fix
some of these
everything.
folks
I'll
that
deal
are
with it
out there
tomorrow.
looking who want to work in Anthropic, OpenAI, some of these other places. Yeah, they may be opening offices here in Seattle, but for most of the roles that you want, you actually don't want to be here. And that's kind of the weirdest part. There's not just people because of this who are leaving the Seattle area in Washington to Texas and to Florida. They're going back to California because they're essentially saying, if you're going to tax the crap out of me, I might as well have better job security and be better positioned as AI kind of transforms my entire industry to not get left in the dust. And so these are two huge headwinds. And I will tell you, this one is one that our legislators are not aware of at all. And when these two things hit together, which they will as we get to the summer, my God. And there's, because I don't know if you've seen the Zillow listings, I see them on Kirkland and Bellevue. Those are the people that I'm talking about right now. And a lot of them are coming to terms with the fact of maybe they lost their job in the first layoff, and they're realizing no new job is coming. They have to leave here for that to happen.
That's horrifying, and that's exactly what I was worried about. And soon, you might see vacancy rates in other parts of the greater Seattle area that look a lot like the office vacancy rates in downtown Seattle. That's my big concern. Aviel Ginsberg, thank you so much for joining us today. Really do appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
establishment have it.
Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder for those of you that are still having some challenges with our video stream, you can always catch the show over at 570 KVI right here on your AM dial. Also, download the KVI app and, of course, stream us at kvi.com. On the radio. not on the computer. Listen on the radio. So I have this alert set up. There's a way that you can set up this tool through Google where you find out anytime your name is used. And the reason I set this up was anytime I get a death threat or something, it usually pops up online first. Good to know about it in advance. But something else is good to know about is whenever my name is mentioned in media articles. As you can imagine, ever since the press pass fight began, with me, Brandy Cruz, Jonathan Cho, every morning I get all these notifications about the different outlets that have covered this. When the Associated Press wrote an article about it and it went out to every publication in the country, then I got a lot of notifications. So finally, the Associated Press has died down a little bit, and I'm seeing more local stuff again. And this popped up from the Spokesman Review. And I got so mad when I read it, and you're about to see why, that I almost lost it. Literally, almost lost it. A trio of conservative media figures will continue to be barred from access to press areas in the State House of Representatives floor, a federal judge ruled on Tuesday. A lawsuit from Seattle area media personalities Ari Hoffman, a local talk show host, Brandy Cruz, a podcaster, and Jonathan Cho, senior fellow at Discovery Institute, stems from last year's legislative session. The three had sought access to press credentials, sitting at a table on the House floor that is reserved for members of the media, but were denied by the Independent Capitol Correspondents Association and House clerks. The trio alleged their denial was based on the critical nature of their editorial reporting and is a constitutional violation in several regards, while an attorney for the House said it was because of their participation in partisan rallies and involvement with non-news organizations that contradicted guidelines for credentialing media. Judge David Estudillo sided with the House and Capitol Correspondents Association, finding the allegations of constitutional violations uncompelling. Well, that's not actually what the ruling was. So, first of all, there are so many inaccuracies, half-truths, and inconsistencies. My guess is you don't actually understand the ruling. That's not what I'm mad about. The Capitol Correspondents Association, is made up of reporters from publications around the state who cover state politics in Olympia. For 50 years, the independent group advised who got credentials to access press areas with its own set of guidelines, and last year excluded the three. Stop. Zach, do you remember me having this battle last year? I had nothing to do with this last year. I wasn't involved in this fight last year. Didn't even do it. So what are they talking about? I'm not even sure. They claim that the three have used their platforms to advocate for certain legislation and were featured speakers at rallies at the Capitol. Stop. Zach, the last time I was a speaker at a rally at the Capitol, I think was my first week on KVI. There was some anti-COVID thing at the Capitol. I don't remember the last time I spoke at a rally on the Capitol steps, because when are these things always held? You were able to go, but I was never able to go. Why is that? Huh? A lot of that, but also the morning show could go. Because the show's on. Exactly. I'm on air. And a lot of times we checked in to be like, hey, what's going on down in Olympia? What the hell are they talking about? A spokesman review reporter is a member of the Capitol Correspondents Association. The newspaper has financially Wait a second. Whoa. Can we read this again? A spokesman review reporter is a member of the Capitol Correspondents Association, and the newspaper has financially contributed to enlist the services of attorney Kathy George, representing the association in this suit. You're telling me that they are paying for this? They're the ones trying to deny us press passes? But it gets worse than that. Was every single outlet that has a reporter in the Capitol Correspondents Association, are they all contributing to fund this lawsuit to keep us out of Olympia? Which means other media outlets here in Washington are funding the lawsuit together with your taxpayer dollars to make sure we don't have press passes. You better believe when I saw this, I said, okay, I can throw my computer through a wall, I can make some angry phone calls, or I can file public disclosure requests. for all the billings and all the payments for this lawsuit. Guess which one I chose? And meanwhile, somebody else is making big decisions. Joe Kent has chosen to leave the Trump administration under interesting circumstances with some outrageous claims. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show's final hour free for all. Your calls, your texts, your thoughts, your stories. Streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, lefties allowed an illegal alien who's an adult to register for high school. And you can guess what happened next. But getting back to our top story of the day, Joe Kent ran twice for Congress here in Washington, lost both times. The first time, we had him on the show a lot. I mean, regularly. And I remember my best interview with Joe Kent. The best interview was him talking about his wife who had passed away, how much she meant to him, what it was like raising his boys without her, and how 9/11 impacted him, 9/11 impacted his wife. And in fact, we did it because it was the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and we did it for a special because I was going to be offline for the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, which is a fast day, and we decided to pack the thing with people talking about their 9/11 experiences. And Joe Kent and a few others, Tiffany Smiley, were some of the first names that came to mind. So, of course, we booked them right away. That was the most authentic I've ever heard Joe Kent talking about his wife. The second time he ran for office, I thought to myself, why is he doing this again? He lost pretty badly last time. I don't see a path for victory this time. But I really don't like Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, so we'll support him, but we're not going to have him on as often. And I think we had him on a handful of times, but it wasn't like the first time. And I know one of those times we had him on because he wrote a book about his wife, who was in the U.S. military, and was killed by ISIS in a roadside bomb. And once again, Joe was very, very authentic when he was talking about his wife. Super authentic. The rest of the time, he's a little stiff. Sounds like he's reading from a script a little bit. But you know what? Former military guy, you get some grace from me on that. Also a guy who was in intelligence, you get some grace on that too. But what happened today, you don't really get any grace on. Joe Kent resigned today. But when he resigned, he flamed everybody on the way out the door and said such outrageous allegations, I can disprove all of them with Google. In fact, I can disprove half of them with just his Twitter account. He wrote this: after much reflection, I've decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center effective today. President Trump always liked him, and President Trump appointed him to this job when he got back into office. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. It's clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Okay. Why are we at war with Iran? We are at war with Iran because they have killed over 1,000 Americans in the last 47 years. Do we need to talk about the Marine barracks bombing in the 1980s? Do we need to talk about all the various terror attacks? How about we talk about the assassination attempts on the president who's sitting in the Oval Office right now? The assassination plots, the assassins they hired. People are in jail for this right now. People are being tried for this right now. No imminent threat? A country that spends its resources not helping out its people, but building nuclear weapons and chanting death to America. These are guys who were involved in funding the October 7th terror attacks, which, by the way, killed 48 Americans on top of everything else. These guys funded ISIS. These guys funded the insurgency in Iraq, killing more U.S. soldiers. And you want to say we haven't been at war with them? Well, they've been at war with us for the last 47 years. Now, he attached to this post on social media a letter, a longer form of what he said already. He wrote, regarding the president, in your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without us getting drawn into never-ending wars. You demonstrated this by killing Qasem Soleimani and by defeating ISIS. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members with the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States, and should you strike now, there was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie, as the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We cannot make this mistake again. Stop. Israel had nothing to do with the Iraq war. The Iraq war was based on bad U.S. intelligence, most notably Curveball. A lot of you may not know who Curveball was. It was a code name given to a source that turned out to be completely fabricated about the WMDs in Iraq. We also know that Saddam Hussein used the WMDs on the Kurds, for example, and we know that Israel took out his nuclear reactor in 1980. Saddam Hussein was not a good guy. But after 9/11, it was, where can we find the closest terrorist? Where's a terrorist? Who do we want to bomb next so 9/11 never happens again? And for some reason, they decided Iraq? Not Iran, which was trying to get nuclear weapons. Not, I don't know, any of the other countries, maybe not Saudi Arabia that may have actually sent the terrorists. None of that. And we hadn't finished the war in Afghanistan yet. But we said, let's go into Iraq and take out Saddam Hussein. And it was controversial. It was very, very controversial. But it was bad intelligence. In fact, Ariel Sharon, who was the prime minister of Israel at the time, told the U.S. not to do it and said, you're going to be dealing with an insurgency, and you're going to be dealing with a long ground war, and you have no exit strategy. Don't do this. Exactly. You remember that? Do you remember any of this? No. Okay, don't worry about it. It's fine. Anywho, yet we did it anyway. Did this work out well for Israel? No. You had the insurgency there. This actually helped Syria become more powerful in the area. Iran was funding all these problems. Iran became more powerful funding all this. All of this became problematic for Israel. How are you blaming any of this on Israel? It makes no sense whatsoever. He said, as a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people, nor justifies the cost of American lives. So I have a question. You're in the administration. Did you tell the president you had these reservations? Did you talk to the president about these reservations? Because now it kind of seems like you were cut out of intelligence briefings. Here's Fox News. Okay, so there's that. Was Joe Kent actually leaking stuff? We don't know. We haven't seen proof on that yet. But I do know that 5 minutes ago, Joe Kent thought that Iran was a big threat. Here's him at his confirmation hearing. The Iranian threat network, which included ISIS. How about this one? Countless and unrelenting. Countless and unrelenting. Now, some people are throwing this one out here, and I'm not big on this. They're saying Joe Kent was a libertarian, then a Democrat, then a Republican. Here's the thing about that. I'm actually going to defend Joe Kent for a minute, even with his other insanity. Joe Kent claims that he went for something Rush Limbaugh was doing called Operation Chaos. Operation Chaos was getting people to vote for the other party to get Bernie Sanders elevated because it'd be fun to vote for him. Now, I want my audience to listen to me, but I don't want you guys to brainlessly follow me on harebrained schemes like that. Right, voting on napkins. No, I didn't tell them to vote on napkins. I said people were voting on napkins. So, somebody who says, yeah, we're going to do whatever Rush Limbaugh says, or any radio host for that matter, are you kidding me with this? That's not the direction you want to go with this. In fact, I just say, instead of saying, well, he voted this way, voted that way, no. I say instead, decide to go for a stunt that he heard on the radio? Okay, interesting, fascinating. But now, it's a little bit worse than that. His new wife, who he married, has connections to Max Blumenthal, who worked with RT, Russian state media, Al-Akbar, linked to Hezbollah messaging, and other outlets critical of U.S. foreign policy. Is it you're getting some bad influence? You're under some bad influence from possibly your spouse. And in that case, it actually becomes something we've heard quite a lot. Kid goes to college, perfectly fine. Kid falls in love with a guy, girl, whatever it is, who has a different political ideology, and they slowly drag the person off the path. You've heard this a lot. This is nothing new. But what really seals the deal for me, let's say he was really concerned about the war, really concerned about it and wanted to stop it. Go to Fox News. Go be on Fox News. I'm sure that Sean Hannity would have him on tonight. I am sure that Laura Ingraham would have him on tonight. Go to any of the conservative outlets. In fact, I bet you CNN would have him on tonight. I bet you CBS would. I bet you anybody would have him on tonight to say, how much do you hate President Trump? Tell us about how much you hate President Trump. Do you know where he's going instead? Tomorrow he's going to be on Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, who has been proven to be anti-Trump, anti-American. And then he's got a speaking gig booked for this weekend to share a stage with Candace Owens. If you want to convince me you're real, you don't go to Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. You go to somebody, go to Sean Hannity, go to Laura Ingraham, go to Jesse Waters, go to anybody in our orbit. Go to Barry Weiss over. Go to Greg Gutfeld. It'll be more fun and more entertaining. You tell some jokes. Tell some stories about Trump. It's Greg Gutfeld. Oh, it's not Joe Kent. Definitely not Joe. Sorry, you set me up for that one. I kind of tipped it off. But are you serious with this? This is the direction we're going in? Also, here's something else. You are now saying that President Trump is easily manipulated. Say what you will about President Trump. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who is easily manipulated and influenced by others. There you go. He doesn't listen to anybody. Otherwise, he wouldn't be tweeting the stuff he says all the time. So, I have just shot holes in all this. And by the way, if you don't believe me on any of this, how about you believe Joe Kent? This is what he said in his own tweet. Iran has been after Trump since January of 2020. This isn't a new threat. In fact, he's got a history of these kind of tweets. He's got a history of statements, including to AIPAC and others, talking about how much he loves Israel, talking about how much he supports Israel, talking about how Iran's a big threat. Iran, it's a threat, it's a threat, it's a threat, it's a threat. Which one is it? Which one is it? Now, the problem is a lot of people on social media, for the next however long Joe Kent is before he announces his podcast, which guarantee you will be the next step. It'll be Unclassified with Joe Kent. Just watch. It'll be something like that, right? It'll be, just guarantee it, mark my words, that's what it's going to be. Show on Real America's Voice or something, or One America News Network or something. Or just watch. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be something like that. Where he's going to come out with the show. Oh, there you go. Exactly. Something like that. All of a sudden, this is going to come out. And he's going to have his show. And he's going to say he has the exclusive access because he knows and he's seen documents. You know who else says that? Candace Owens. You know who else says that? Tucker Carlson. Show me the documents to back up anything you say. And I'll revise my opinion. Anything at all. But until then, what's going to happen is they're going to say, Ari, you're a member of the Israel lobby. And I'm going to say, of course I am. They have the best and only kosher snacks in the Israel lobby. That's where I'm going to go. But no, I'm going to say, prove it. I've never gotten any money from Israel. Be nice if all this money was going around. I wish there was a Jewish cabal sometimes. Sounds like it's very profitable for all the things they say about this. Then I get the controls of the space laser for a while. Show me the proof of anything you're saying. and not hearsay. Give me the actual proof. Because until then, I got plenty of things in your own record that contradict everything you're saying, including you, Joe Kent. You are welcome to come back on the show and prove anything you say. In fact, after the show today, I'm going to send Joe Kent a text. Say, heard you said some spicy stuff. Would love to have you back on the show to explain. What do you think the response is going to be? You think we're going to get one? I don't think so. I think he's going to friendly voices right now. I think that's what's going to happen. We will reach out and try and get him back on the show. But he's disagreeing with himself. He's disagreeing with his own record. And it seems like he's spewing the conspiracy theories because he has realized that if you go to that direction, you can get a lot of clicks. You can get a lot of podcasts. You can get a lot of love from that side. Because that's exactly what's happening with the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens of the world. It makes me nauseous. It makes me sick. Because I used to really assume the best of a guy like Joe Kent. Lost his wife, raising his boys by himself, served our country. And I take no pleasure in this takedown. None whatsoever. It actually makes me sick to my stomach that I even have to do it. I was exhausted before I came on air today because I had to pull all this stuff up on a guy we've had on this show at least 20 times. At least 20 times, if not more. I really wish I didn't have to do this. But we call balls and strikes here. I want to know what you think. Do you think he is completely full of it? Do you think the brain rot has gotten him? Or do you think he's got some good points? And we should really see what they are. Give me a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Because I bet the deeper we dig, the more we're going to find out this ain't the case, and somebody's starting a show or starting a podcast or whatever the case may be, or worse yet, and this has not been confirmed, or worse yet, was about to lose his job for leaking in the White House, and then decided, no, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory instead. Before my reputation is destroyed, I'm going to set the narrative myself. What do you think it is? Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. That's not the craziest story of the day, by the way, my friends. What's up next is an illegal alien was allowed to register for high school. But he's an adult, and you can assume what happened next. We'll give you the details. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show. You want to know how much they've lost their minds in Virginia? An illegal alien who came to the U.S. from El Salvador was released into the country by the Joe Biden administration, was charged with 9 counts of assault and battery. He was enrolled in Fairfax High School as a student, despite the fact that he is older than high school age. I mean, this is crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. Apparently, he was accused of groping several girls between their legs in the hallways during school throughout the school year. The Fairfax County Sheriff has also refused to honor an ICE detainer for the suspect. Israel Flores Ortiz is a junior at the high school and is in the country illegally, even though he's 20 years old. About a dozen girls have come forward alleging that Ortiz put his hands between their legs and groped them at school. He was arrested on March 7th and appeared in court on Friday. According to 7 News, there's a group of about 12 individuals who have reported this assault. He was charged with 9 counts of assault and battery. It was all perpetrated by a single individual who is a stranger to the girls. He just sneakily walked up behind them and did what he did. This is a groping of private areas is what he did. On Friday, the judge denied the defendant's request to be released from jail after he was accused of the crimes. Fairfax County's Commonwealth Attorney, Steve Discano's office, said they had agreed to his bail request. Why would you agree to the bail request for a guy like this? He's in the country illegally. However, they said, or what the prosecutor said, is that the request for bail would not protect the public from him being a public safety threat. When parents of the girls were asked about how the school treated the situation, one of them said, abysmal. I think from the very beginning, Fairfax County has attempted to diminish what happened to these girls, probably because the guy is here illegally. Parents of the girls, who have alleged the behavior coming from Ortiz, said that the school district has attempted to sweep it under the rug. The school district only acknowledged the allegations in a letter on Thursday, one of the parents said. After we demanded it, multiple parents demanded that there be a letter before we even got it. They said it was a completely sanitized letter. It's one of those, well, we take the safety of our students very seriously. Doesn't seem so in this case, because apparently these complaints were going on all year. Let's see, school still starts in September, right? September, October, November, December, January, February, March. That's 7 months. 7 months. Insane. Absolutely insane. This is where that suicidal empathy that our friend Gad Saad talks about all the time. They said these girls, one of the mothers told reporters, these girls have experienced harassment and bullying from peers at school, including people they once thought were their friends once the letter was sent out. Fairfax County Central Schools said while Fairfax County Public Schools is unable to comment on the specifics due to federal and state privacy laws, we prioritize student and staff safety. Boom! Of course, that's what they said. ICE has issued a detainer for Ortiz in order to deport him to his home country of El Salvador. However, Fairfax County Sheriff is not honoring the detainer. Quote, unfortunately, sanctuary politicians like Governor Abigail Spanberger are outlawing cooperation with ICE and choosing to release criminal illegal aliens from their jails back into their communities to create more American victims, said an ICE spokesperson. We're calling on Fairfax County to honor our detainer to ensure this violent criminal is removed from our country so he can never claim another victim again. You know, I told all you guys I loved getting the press releases from the Department of Homeland Security. Look at these guys we got out of here. Look at them. They're terrible. They're horrible. We're getting rid of them. You know, I'm getting more and more of press releases like this one. Press releases where they say, we call on this county to honor the detainer, and here's the horrible thing they did. We call on this county to honor this detainer, and here's the other horrible thing they did. And unfortunately, I'm seeing more and more of those than the arrest ones. I know I'm not seeing all the arrests, but the fact that I'm seeing more and more of these detainer emails means there's more and more people who are in custody. More and more illegal aliens who are in custody who shouldn't be in this country at all. And yet, they're being released from custody. In fact, now we know that this person might be out of jail soon and allowed to go back to class, which is even more insane. That's what it's looking like right now. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from David in Vancouver. David, what's going on, man? Yeah, sounds like a day that ends in Y around here, right, man? Yeah. You know, it's. I'll tell you this, David, is that's the sense I'm getting from the text line today. That's the sense I'm getting from the emails today. People are just disappointed because they had such faith in this guy. They really were just disappointed. Now, for me, I'm not going to judge somebody for losing an election. I lost the election. Okay? You want somebody to win an election. Sometimes it's out of your control. But I'm disappointed by this because you don't have to burn down the place on your way out the door. For example, Tricia McLaughlin. You might remember her. She came on the show a bunch of times. She was working for the Department of Homeland Security. She resigned a little bit earlier this year after 1 year with the Trump administration. I'm sure she has things she didn't like. Who has an employer where they like everything, right? And instead, she's out there saying, here's what I think about America First, and here's the policies I like, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't heard her say anything bad. And she could if she wanted to. You don't need to burn the whole thing down, and I'm not saying cut down on your freedom of speech. But to flame everybody on the way out the door with easily disprovable claims, I think that's what's bothering everybody. Was that what's bothering you, David? Yeah, see, with me, I'm looking at this a little differently. I don't think somebody who's going to be that much of a disruptor runs twice. I really don't. There were other people who could have run too. But yeah, there's a lot of things that now I look back on that were rubbing me the wrong way that I should have paid closer attention to, and I didn't. And it's kind of disappointing to me. It really just is. And that's the feeling it seems like I'm getting from a lot of people. David, I hear what you're saying. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. I'm just going to read these texts in order. I'm just going to read all of them because this is what the text line says. This one from the 360, Joe Kent has now gone out of his mind. Somebody really changed him. The Democrats, perhaps? This one here from John in Lakewood. I think what happened to Kent was that he became a small fish in a big pond, got ridiculed, put in his place, and couldn't handle the heat of D.C. politics. Now he's an angry guy. This one here from Becky says, I wonder if he was a leaker. I stand with President Trump. It will be interesting to see what unfolds. This one from the 202, can we see the evidence of Joe Kent's claim? Can we see evidence of Iran's alleged imminent attack? Okay, by the way, fair question, by the way, 202. If you want to see evidence of that, the White House should release it, 1,000%. But can we also see evidence of whatever Joe Kent is claiming? This one here from the 253, absolutely stunned. Sounds to me like Joe pulled a reverse Fetterman. Another one from Nico regarding Joe Kent. I think it has to do with his new wife, the circle she is in, and by association, he moves in. The woke right, Alexander Dugin crowd, that is my hunch, and that's who his wife is working for. She's working for Max Blumenthal. There are some serious questions there. Can't judge somebody by what their spouse does, but there are some very serious questions there about association. Let me know what you think. Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Switching gears entirely, St. Paddy's Day, but Zoran Mamdani celebrated it in a really fascinating way. Had nothing whatsoever to do with St. Paddy's Day. Had everything whatsoever to do with celebrating terrorism. Tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. We got so many giveaways today. Today we are giving away two tickets to see Aaron Lewis and the State Liners at the Muckleshoot Event Center on March 24th. Now, all you have to do in order to win these fantabulous prizes is text the word I give you to the number I give you. Do not text me your name, your phone number, anything else. And make sure you text it all in one word. This was challenging for some before, so we're going to try it again. Today's word is a while, as in it's been a while. Exactly, like that. So, a while, one word, AWHILE. Text it to 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Do not enter more than once, because the dude used to be the lead singer of Stayed. Oh, see, I was 8 years old when I found that out. I see, working together, look at all the stuff I find out from the youngin'. Isn't that great? This is fantastic. Yeah, I was going to say, how old are you now? That's right, yeah. Anywho, but yes, text the word a while, one word, to 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. This one here from Jeff. I think Joe Kent was talking to his wife like most husbands. You probably do with your wife, and she was the leaker. She was leaking things, and maybe that got called out, and somebody took offense, like Donald Trump. Who knows? By the way, entirely possible. Entirely possible. I talk to my wife all the time. We talk about news stuff all the time. But my wife is a steel trap. That's right. She don't share nothing. That's right. Meanwhile here, Joe Kent, I bet he was going to be let go and resigned first. Yeah, and by the way, the signs are kind of pointing that way, but to be fair, and to play devil's advocate, because we are the most pro-devil show on the radio, is that if I'm going to say I need proof from Joe on the allegations he makes about whatever it is, I need proof of this. Because it's real easy for the Trump administration to say, yeah, we were going to fire him, but he resigned first. That's like the old boss thing. I didn't fire you, you quit. You quit, you didn't quit, I fired you. Right? So I need to see some proof on that also. I see there's some stories coming out, and they have a really big megaphone over there. I want to know what actually happened. I really do want to know. Switching gears over to what's going on in New York City. New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani, according to the Post Millennial, used a St. Paddy's Day breakfast to air grievances about the Israel-Hamas war. Can we stop for a second? What does that have to do with St. Paddy's Day? No, really. I'm very, very curious what it has to do with it. Here's what he said. Hang on. What does this have to do with St. Patrick's Day? Granted, I know very little about St. Paddy's Day. I know that it's Irish themed, and I know that there's some drinking involved, and pardon me if that's offensive, but I know very, very little about St. Paddy's Day. The most I know about St. Paddy's Day, I learned about the movie The Fugitive. That's what I know from it, where you have Dr. Richard Kimball trying to get away after seeing a one-armed man in jail who's not the right one-armed man he's after. And he tries to leave the federal building, but the federal marshals are right there. Tommy Lee Jones is right on him. And to evade capture, he goes through a St. Paddy's Day parade in the middle of downtown Chicago. That is the extent of what I know about this. But I know it has nothing to do with Gaza. I know it has nothing to do with Israel. I know it has nothing to do with Palestinians. So what the hell are we talking about here? This is Mamdani's big thing? We're going to use it for that? Can't just be Happy St. Paddy's Day for all who celebrated. St. Patrick was wonderful because he did whatever, and we celebrate him for that, and I give my love to the community and l'chaim, or whatever it is, right? Isn't that just what we do? I really don't know. Do you people pinch around here? Do you do that when you're not wearing green on St. Paddy's Day? In New York, that's a big thing. I don't know what any of that is. I don't know a lot about St. Paddy's Day. I really don't. Pardon my ignorance. In fact, Mamdani, I was going to say I didn't think there's a big one in Roy, Washington. I'm not sure how big it is in Seattle, Washington, for that matter. I really just don't know. Not a big Jewish community either. So Mamdani was also slammed for a photo op with the Jewish community, with select Jewish leaders. Why? Well, because we found out that his wife is a raging anti-Semite because she liked a whole bunch of the posts of Hamas terrorists on October 7th. She was actually had somebody who's compared Jews to vampires and cockroaches illustrate a book for her, or she illustrated the book for her, and didn't bother to see who you're in business with. By the way, you want to know how that's nonsense? I know this because I know people in the book world. But what happens is when you're writing a children's book, the writer and the illustrator talk all the time. It's not, here's my script, go illustrate it. That's not how it works. So we know he's full of crap on that. And for Ramadan, he brings on over Mahmoud Khalil, the Hamas-supporting lunatic from the Columbia campuses, to hang out with him. I guess it's a dinner would be my guess. Well, I don't know where you were trying to go with that one. Oh, I see what you were saying. I took it a little too literally. Sorry, I got every other joke today, man. I tried. So you invite this guy over for Ishtar, what's it called? The meal, whatever. I don't know what it's called. See, I'm showing my ignorance of other holidays today. Dinner. We're having dinner after our fast day. That's what we're doing. Invites Mahmoud Khalil over for dinner. Great, wonderful, fantastic. So he meets with the Jewish community, but he only invites ones he likes. By the way, he didn't even invite the ADL or any of those organizations. None of them. Just the one he thinks would be friendly, so we know it's a glorified photo op. And I'll say the ones who are friendly. Have you learned your lesson yet? What is it going to take for you to realize this guy is a terrorist supporter and you helped put him in office? Congratulations. You played yourselves. That's what that one is. Speaking of Mahmoud Khalil, by the way, he claims it's racist to ask Palestinians to condemn Hamas. I'm sorry, what? He spoke at the South by Southwest Festival in Austin on Sunday and said that to ask a Palestinian like himself to condemn terror group Hamas is very, very racist. Interesting. Khalil, who was on the verge of having his student visa and green card revoked following violent anti-Jewish and anti-American protests on the Columbia campus before a judge intervened, was also recently the guest of New York City's Zohar Mamdani at Gracie Mansion. He was asked on the South by Southwest stage, according to the Post-Millennial, about his refusal to condemn the Hamas terror group, which staged a violent massacre in Israel on October 7, 2023. He said the ask for him to condemn it was disingenuous and absurd. He said it's very racist to ask a Palestinian this question just to validate their views. He said, I don't see them asking any Israeli or American politician about condemning all the killing that's happened, whether in Lebanon, Palestine, and Iran. Interesting you pick those countries. You mean where Hezbollah is, or where Hamas is, or where the Ayatollah was? Apparently he missed the questions to Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and other politicians, asking them about this, which they literally did. He said, this sort of hypocrisy and double standard that's being used against us, I refuse to be part of that and would never answer a question. He's defended the massacre of 1,200 people carried out by Hamas multiple times. He said it was just to break the cycle and that Palestinians were not being heard. When I'm not being heard, I scream a little bit louder. I don't go massacre a whole bunch of people. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. This is the hero of the left, him and Mamdani. Wow, what a duo. What a duo. These are the heroes of the left. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Only good news to wrap up the show. Your good news headlines put a smile on your face. Heading into your evening commute, you're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. It is time to feel good as we wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And before we get to our good news headlines, it's been a day around here. Aside from all the crazy news, big shout out to Zach, because when the internet and everything was down around here today, I know we had some issues with our stream today, but everything looks like it's back up and running. Zach is a rock star. He was up since very early this morning. He's going to a movie screening tonight. What is that, more than 12 hours worth of work? And still doing sports for our sister station, Northwest News Radio. Somewhere. We don't have wood in here. We got, like, big cushiony things. Composites, right, on the walls. Lots of that stuff around here. Switching gears over to what's going on. I don't know if you heard, Snoqualmie got 6 feet of snow. 6 feet of snow. I have never seen Snoqualmie like this before. A buddy of mine texted me Saturday night. He goes, they got 6 feet of snow over the weekend. He wants to go up on Sunday. I'm like, I will be sleeping in, but thank you very much for the invitation. Anyway, I don't know if you saw this insane video of a guy buried in the snow being rescued. So, according to Como News, a heightened avalanche risk in the Central Cascades is drawing new attention just days after a skier was partially buried on a run at the summit in Snoqualmie. The summit at Snoqualmie is not where you get buried by an avalanche. It's where normally you mess up your skis because you went over too much ice or rocks or something like that. It's not where you get buried in an avalanche. The whole thing was captured on camera. Ian Deans, who recorded the rescue, said he hopes the video and his warning helps others as new avalanche alerts take effect. Is this guy okay? He asked in the video as he rushes toward a pair of skis sticking out of the snow. You just see the skis. Is there anybody even attached to those suckers? With only part of an arm visible. The recording captures his heavy breathing as he digs frantically, repeatedly asking the skier if he is okay while receiving no response. And every time he pulls the guy out, he sinks in more and more. Video of the rescue, which happened on Friday, a ski run in Summit Central, has been spreading on social media exactly what Dean said he wanted, not for notoriety, but for safety. He said, I started digging, but the snow kept sloughing back into the same hole. I was just trying to break the resistance enough so I could pull him out. And from the time he was buried till I got him out, I counted it was just over 30 seconds. The skier did not initially respond when Deans asked if he was okay. After a pause, the skier answered, yeah, thank you, man. Dean's a professional skier who's been filming Friday's heavy snowfall for the resort, said he and a friend noticed the skier's legs sticking out of the snow. He said the incident highlights how quickly conditions can change and how important it is to skier travel in snowy terrain with others. Risks include deep snow immersion, skiers falling headfirst into tree wells, and the possibility of avalanches. The Northwest Avalanche Center has issued a high avalanche warning, citing heavy snowfall, combined with a forecast of rain and warmer temperatures that could trigger dangerous slides. He says, even if you tell your friends, hey, let's ski together, that doesn't mean just being close to each other. You need to be able to see them. They need to be able to hear you, and you need to be able to hear them. I actually have a really scary story about this when I was in high school. I was skiing with 2 of my friends. One's a guy, one's a girl. And I was in front, and she was after me, and my friend was after her. And I usually ski pretty fast with no style whatsoever. I'm one of those kamikaze type skiers, just go down the hill and hope that I stop. And I was much worse back then than I am now. At least in the meantime, I've gotten some lessons and gotten a little bit better. But I remember stopping and waiting for my friends. And I see somebody go careening off into the woods. And it looked pretty scary. I didn't know who it was, but I saw a ski patrol guy nearby, and I said, hey, I think somebody up there might need some help. And the ski patrol guy goes on his way and goes. I told him what I saw. My buddy comes down and he goes, have you seen Jane? Let's just use the name Jane. Have you seen Jane? And I'm like, no, I haven't seen Jane. You didn't pass her? And he says, no, I didn't pass her. And then it dawned on me, oh my God, was that Jane? But she was so far up that you can't really, sidestep your way up the hill. So we went to the nearest lift we could, went back up to the top to try and help ski patrol. By the time we're on the lift, we saw our friend being loaded on the stretcher to be taken down the mountain. Turns out she hit a tree and had a concussion. And if we hadn't seen her, if somebody hadn't seen her, that would have been that. Why? It's not your jam? Yeah. Clearly you've never been water skiing with me, sir. Well, no. So, okay. You know what a banana boat is? The big yellow thing that people sit on? No, not a banana hammock. What is with you today? No. Oh, I know where your brain's at. Too much talking about the Olympus Spa and what the guy's wearing up there. No! Banana boat, the big yellow thing that looks like kind of a hot dog that tows behind the boat. Okay. So you know how you put like 5 or 6 people on one of those suckers. Okay, this isn't technically water skiing, but just to illustrate. No, sir, I taught water skiing. I know what it is. We're on the banana boat. Yeah, sort of. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. So what happens is that we're going banana boating, and when we did it with just a staff, because we had these things for camp, it says don't tow over 15 miles an hour on the side of those suckers. That's more a guideline than actual rule. Yeah, let's just say there were some broken ribs and broken other things because we went so fast with those things. You can get hurt on them now for the water skiing. So when you're, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm just telling you what can happen. I'm telling you what can happen. Hang on. I'm getting there, man. Okay? So, wakeboarding, water skiing. There are lots of ways you can hurt yourself, especially wakeboarding, which is still not water skiing. Wakeboarding, you land badly on a jump and a spin, and I land badly a lot when I was going for my instructor tests and things like that. The way the instructor test used to work, I have no idea how it works now. You got to be able to do the thing you taught, which I guess makes sense, but also kind of doesn't. Anyway, so yeah, when you say those who can't do teach, no, you actually have to be able to do it in order to teach it. So anyway, I landed on my head a bunch of times. In fact, I started wearing a helmet during water skiing because it hurts so bad coming down on my head when I'm doing the flips and landing them badly. Yeah, so yes, you can get hurt during water skiing. If you do. Sure. You just sink. You just fall. There you go. You hope for the best. Well, that's going to do it for us today, my friends. But fear not. We will be back tomorrow with more insane stories, more exciting guests, and more giveaways. You've been listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.